largest land-sea-air battle in history.
They were firing at us from 3 directions.
It was scary.
And the last great clash of World War II.
You couldn't stop them until you killed them.
A costly fight to the bitter end.
They thought it was an honor to die for the Emperor. I thought it was an honor to live for Uncle Sam.
Using authentic battlefield footage, cutting-edge graphics, and eyewitness accounts from the heroes who survived.
Nobody thought about themselves. It was too intense.
This is the Battle of Okinawa, as never before told.
That was my baptism of big fire.
April 1st, 1945, Okinawa. Only 340 miles away from mainland Japan, the island is the Japanese Empire's last line of defense. Okinawa's large landmass and multiple airfields make the island an ideal staging post for the U.S. military's next step, the invasion of Japan itself.
People like to think of D-Day as being the biggest invasion of the war. The largest invasion of the Second World War was the Okinawa invasion in 1945. With an assault force of 183,000, it was bigger than June 6, 1944.
4:50 a.m. U.S. naval forces begin unleashing a pre-dawn typhoon of steel and bombs, consisting of over 100,000 rockets and artillery shells. It's the heaviest use of bombardment in any amphibious landing of the Second World War. Tasked with leading the invasion force of 183,000 soldiers and Marines is Lieutenant General Simon Buckner from the 10th Army. For the Japanese, Lieutenant General Mitsuru Ushijima commands over 100,000 highly trained men, ready and willing to fight to the bitter end. Ushijima's orders are to hold on to this island at any cost.
It was introducing a level of intimidation because the Marines and the soldiers knew the Japanese are going to fight for every last foot until the last man is dead.
8 a.m. The first wave of over 60,000 U.S. troops is launched. Pre-invasion estimates predict as many as 80% of them will be killed or wounded in the beach assault. Sergeant R.V. Bergen, Kilo Company, 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines, is one of those whose life is on the line.
We had been told that we were going to lose a hell of a lot of men at the beach.
Yet, as they advance toward the beach, they're met with nothing but eerie silence.
We didn't know where in the hell they were at, to tell you the truth. It was absolutely mind-boggling to think that close to Japan, they didn't meet us with strong resistance on Okinawa.
U.S. forces land almost completely unopposed and immediately sweep across the south-central part of the island.
U.S. Army soldiers that landed on April Fool's Day, 1945, had the strange experience of confronting no enemy opposition. It gave the soldiers and the Marines the false impression that things would go well on Okinawa.
April 9th, day 9 of the invasion. The U.S. 96th Infantry Division comes up against Kakazu Ridge and grinds to a halt. The Japanese have effectively lured the Americans into territory where they hold the advantage.
U.S. 96th Infantry Division experiences what is going to typify the rest of the campaign as it approaches the hill mass around Kakazu. They walk into a wall of fire. As the infantry units come out in the open, they're being swept by machine gun fire from multiple directions. But then as they get closer and closer to the hill mass, they begin to receive artillery fire and mortar fire. And the artillery fire is coming from somewhere off in the distance. They have no hope of doing anything about that artillery fire. The only hope that they have is to try to knock out the machine gun positions. But the enemy has dug in, and the prepared positions were literally invisible.
April 20th, day 20. General Ushijima believes he has the Americans on the run and orders an all-out attack to finish them off. In the fight of his life at Nishibaru Ridge is 20-year-old mortar gunner Private First Class Donald Denker of Love Company, 382nd Infantry, 96th Division.
The Japanese launched a major counterattack. They were firing at us from 3 directions.
Denker and the other mortar squads strike back at the attacking waves of Japanese soldiers, firing shells off at a ferocious pace.
Usually we fire them 30 seconds, a minute apart, but here we're firing 5 shells in a minute at 200 to 300 yards and then closer.
The M1 81mm mortar is a lightweight, high angle of fire weapon used for close support of infantry riflemen. Capable of being deployed at a moment's notice, it can be elevated as well as traversed, giving it an effective range from 100 to 3,300 yards. When the operator drops the round into the tube, the firing pin at the bottom ignites the charge, and the explosion drives the round up and out. The mortars help the Americans fend off the first wave. The second, larger wave immediately attacks.
We only had 2 mortar shells left, so I headed back a couple hundred yards. And here were 2 dead American mortar ammunition bearers. They each had a mortar shell carrying bag. So here was 24 mortar shells. I put one over my shoulder. Couldn't do it now.
As the targets get closer, Denker quickly raises the mortar barrel to reduce the range.
I cranked the mortar up to 86 degrees, charge 0, almost straight up in the air, absolutely minimum distance. You never fire a mortar that elevation. We fired down to about 50 yards.
This move puts Denker in danger from his own fire. When an M43A1 high explosive round strikes a target, the fuse detonates the TNT payload, creating a 30-yard kill zone of deadly fragmentation. Denker and his team need to take the risk. It's kill or be killed.
Nobody thought about themselves. It was too intense. I guess I felt nervous, but determined to do my job and determined to not let my buddies down. The Japanese got close enough, so I even got a shot or 2 at them with my pistol.
At great cost, Denker and Love Company managed to hold the line, turning back the Japanese, for now. Tasked with taking the small island of Ayashima, for the last 4 days, the 77th Infantry Division has been fending off a full frontal Japanese assault. Strategically important for its airfield, Ayashima was meant to be an easy 2-day battle. It has turned into an almost unending banzai charge, an all-out suicide attack. Among those on the front line is Private First Class Jim Cotus of Charlie Company, 306th Infantry, 77th Division.
If you heard them screaming, it put the chills up and down your spine, I'll tell you. We set up our machine guns, and we laid that fire. We had a crossfire. And we used nothing but armor-piercing ammunition. You couldn't stop them until you killed them. Some got through. With a rifle, you only got 8 rounds of ammo. Well, it don't take long to fire 8.
The 77th fend off the attack, but as the adrenaline wears off, Cotus is unable to walk.
I got real nervous and shaky. I was so scared, you know. I can't believe how frightened you are. Some guys pretend they can take it, but if you got any feelings at all, it bothers. It bothers.
April 22nd, day 22. It takes almost a week, but the airfields on Ayashima are finally secure and now protect the U.S. 10th Army's rear flank. The delay forces the Americans to realize the battle for Okinawa is going to take a lot longer than anticipated, and that's a problem. As the ground troops are tied up on land, battleships and cruisers are at greater risk as they wait nearby to support them.
Because of the fact that we had to depend on naval power, ships were in some cases anchored. They were, in many respects, a sitting duck.
Swarms of kamikaze planes attack. Their sole suicide mission is to crash their explosive-laden craft into U.S. ships. Every day the 10th Army is tied up in ground assault is another day the U.S. Navy is left exposed. It's vital that Okinawa is secured quickly. The Japanese have other ideas. April 24th, 1945, day 24 in the battle for Okinawa. As U.S. ships continue to pound Japanese positions with a barrage from their 354 guns, 650 Navy and Marine planes join the attack. Americans at last break through the first Japanese defense. But U.S. forces quickly hit a stronger, better fortified defensive line, running right across the waist of the island. The notorious Shuri Line. The Shuri Line is not just a line, but a deep fortified network of underground caves and tunnels beneath a series of ridges. This is General Mitsuru Ushijima's masterstroke, to focus all his strength on this one area where he can rain down maximum firepower on any U.S. advance. To make matters worse for the Americans, their naval forces are experiencing grave losses due to constant kamikaze attacks. 15 U.S. warships are already sunk. May 1st, day 31. The 5th Marines arrive at the Shuri Line to relieve the battered 27th Army Infantry Division. With the Marines is Sergeant R.V. Bergen.
On May the 2nd, we started to move out, and the machine gun opened up. They killed three of our men and wounded us. I was with some of those Marines out there for 2.5 years, and whenever somebody get hit, it's just like your family. That's when I decided that he needed knocking out, and needed knocking out right quick, like.
The Japanese machine gunner is completely hidden. Up against such tactics, Bergen resorts to desperate measures to break the stalemate.
I knew which way he was coming from. Didn't know exactly where he was at, but I knew he was right there in that area. So I got a bright idea. If I walked around there, I could see the fire coming out of the muzzle of that machine gun.
To the disbelief of his fellow Marines, Bergen slowly edges out of cover, making himself a target for the machine gun. He's hoping to spot the muzzle flare of the gun, giving away its position. He's banking on the Japanese machine gunner missing him on the first shot.
Sure enough, he opened up on me. He put 2 bullet holes in my right dungaree between my knee and ankle, and 3 bullet holes in my left dungaree. He was very close, but I saw the fire. I knew exactly where he was set up. He was in some bushes. I guess he thought he had the world by the tail, but he was mistaken.
Bergen calls in the coordinates for a mortar strike.
I was pretty darn good with the distance. Approximately 300 yards or 600 yards, and I just knew. Fired 1 round. I made an adjustment. I got a direct hit with the 2nd round. Machine gun went forward and the Jap went backwards. We didn't have any trouble then going across the valley.
Bergen is awarded the Bronze Star for his selfless actions.
Some people told me I was brave by doing that. After I thought about it, I said, you're pretty damn stupid, too.
May 3rd, day 33. The battle rages all along the Shuri line. Both sides are taking heavy losses. The 77th Infantry Division is making painfully slow progress at the Maida Escarpment. Charlie Company is pinned down by a Japanese sharpshooter. Private Jim Kotas is given the order to take him out.
Anytime there was a target, they used me to shoot them. Try to. As a kid, I had a rifle and I used to practice a lot.
The Japanese sharpshooter is observed on a ridge 500 yards away.
He had two spots. They'd go back and forth, but you didn't see him as he's moving, but you had those two places and you watch closely. That was my target. I wasn't paying any attention to anything else.
The M1 Garand rifle is a clip-fed semi-automatic shoulder weapon with armor-piercing ammunition, effective up to 875 yards. The aim point can be adjusted higher or lower with the elevation knob and adjusted left or right with the windage knob. The elevation and windage knobs make audible clicks when they are turned, and each click changes the strike of the bullet, approximately 1 inch on the target for every 100 yards of range.
You judge your distance and you know what the wind is. Set your sight for 500 yards.
Kotas scans the ridge patiently, waiting for the Japanese sharpshooter to appear. He has only one chance to take him out.
And I got him on the first shot.
Charlie Company is now free to move out. May 8th, day 38. Despite a massive Japanese counterattack, American forces are inching forward against the Shuri line. R.V. Bergen's 5th Marines Kilo Company is again pinned down by a cleverly concealed enemy. Artillery strikes are called in. But every time the troops attempt to move, they come under fire. The artillery is having no effect.
I couldn't figure out why that artillery wasn't doing the job. And I finally decided that artillery is hitting the edge of that ridge, and they were down behind that. And whenever we'd start to move out, they would come to the top of it after the artillery quit firing.
Because the artillery fire comes in at a shallow angle, it can't reach down behind the ridge.
So I decided that I would pepper it with the mortars, because they'd go up and come straight down. They'd get places that artillery couldn't touch.
Bergen conceives a plan to use the mortar guns to drop shells directly on top of the hidden Japanese. But he doesn't know for sure that they are there. Under strict orders to conserve ammunition, his unit's rookie superior officer objects to Bergen's plan.
Scotty, when he found out that I wanted to fire 20 rounds per gun, he just raised hell. He went, no, we're not going to fire that many rounds. He said, we don't have the ammunition.
Bergen's so sure of his hunch, he defies a direct order.
And I said, fire. Scotty, come unglued. I'm telling you the truth.
Even though Bergen can't see the Japanese positions, he patterns fire from 3 mortar guns to create a lethal kill zone. It should trap any Japanese behind the ridge. When the mortar barrage is complete, the company gingerly moves out.
When we moved out, we didn't have any resistance. And I went up and crawled up on top of that ridge and looked. And I counted 53 freshly killed Japs. They were trapped. They didn't have anywhere to go. I guess we got the whole crew.
Bergen's Kilo Company's success is not universally felt. Overall, the U.S. 10th Army is being decimated in what becomes known as a blowtorch and corkscrew style of battle. Every cave, every pillbox, every hidden Japanese machine gun has to be cleared out with satchel charges and flamethrowers. Every inch gained is paid for dearly with American blood. But worse is to come. The Marines' nightmare, the notorious Sugarloaf Hill. May 15th, day 45. Far from over, the battle for Okinawa has already delivered devastating losses to both sides. U.S. 10th Army General Simon Buckner orders another major U.S. attack across the Shuri Line. Leading the charge in the west are the 6th Marines, conducting a push on Sugarloaf Hill. It may not look like much, but Sugarloaf Hill is a key fulcrum in the Japanese Shuri Line defense. Underneath the hill, protected from U.S. artillery in a honeycomb of caves, 2,000 Japanese soldiers lie in wait. Sugarloaf is especially difficult to attack because it's protected by fire from surrounding hills.
The nature of the Japanese defense of Okinawa was that every single hill mass was heavily supported by surrounding hill masses. And so the result was that we had one approach and one approach only that would work, and that was the broad front approach, to push evenly toward this line. The only way for the Americans to win this battle is for infantrymen to come out in the open. And what that produced was a situation where our casualties were extraordinarily high.
Over several days, the Marines repeatedly take, lose, and retake Sugarloaf at a great loss of life. Private Jack Houston is with George Company, 2nd Battalion, 22nd Marines.
At that time, I think there was around 26 or so of us. We didn't have any leaders, and all of a sudden this Major Courtney showed up.
Major Henry Courtney takes command and informs his troops they are going to charge Sugarloaf one more time.
I figured he's going to say, "Take off, men." I was all set to say, "After you, sir." And what he said was, "Follow me, men." And I humbly followed the man. All of a sudden, everybody's getting hit, and they're falling all around you. The guy right in front of me caught 2 right in the kidney. A mortar shell came in and landed, knocked me down. Guys were just getting hit all over the place.
The Marines traverse around the base of Sugarloaf.
We went around the corner of this first hill, and the machine gun opened up almost immediately right over our heads. Couldn't get down far enough to hit us because we were so close underneath. We threw some grenades up there, and it silenced the machine gun. We start up the hill, and I was right behind the major, and the Jap jumped out of a cave, knocked his grenade on his helmet to arm it, and just threw it right between the major and I. I yelled, "Grenade!" Threw myself backwards, and I ended up on top of a machine gunner. He had some nasty things to say about my family. And the major just stood there, and the grenade never went off. I start back up again.
Halfway up the hill, they pause to gather grenades and ammo.
Major Courtney decides he's going to have a banzai attack of his own. That's just a term he used. And he said, "Let him go now." We threw our grenades over the top of the hill. The major starts going up straight. He got killed almost immediately up there. As I got to the very top of the hill, first thing I saw was a hill leading to a road, and I could see Japs jumping out of the trench to get across the road. And so I just started shooting. It's like shooting ducks in a barrel. You know, that sounds terrible, but I was exultant. Call it revenge or whatever you want. I felt good about it. I went through 2 full clips and I started a third one. And then all of a sudden, the top of the hill just blew up. It was like it was mined or something. That wasn't the end of it. We'd lost the hill again several times.
Over an excruciating week-long period, it takes 11 attempts before the Marines finally secure Sugarloaf Hill. The cost? A staggering 2,662 U.S. killed or wounded. And Sugarloaf is only one of several strongholds which must be taken before the Shuri line will break. May 17th, day 47. The 77th Infantry Division is approaching Shuri, the center of the Japanese defensive line. Only one more ridge needs to be taken before they can storm General Ushijima's headquarters. Before dawn, 204 men of the 307th Regiment advance to the crest of Ishimi Ridge. From here, they could launch the assault on Shuri Castle, but only if they can hold the ridge. Green recruit Private Joe Casillas, Easy Company, 307th Infantry, 77th Division, is trying to dig into the hard coral rock in a race against the rising sun.
Pretty soon the Japanese, they woke up and found out we were there. And they broke loose. I mean, from all directions, from the sides and from the rear. Mortar shells, artillery. That was my baptism of big fire right there.
All day long, the company withstand heavy fire from all directions. And as supplies rapidly diminish, many men are killed or wounded.
I heard men holler for their mother. I didn't hear one of them holler for their father, their mother.
Fighting continues through the night and into the next morning. Most of Easy Company's heavy weapons have been taken out by Japanese fire. Casillas sees a Browning automatic rifle lying by the gunner who has been hit. The M19 18A2 Browning automatic rifle is a fully automatic heavy weapon which fires from a 20-round clip and has an effective range of 600 yards. It's equipped with 2 settings, 450 and 650 rounds per minute. One man with a BAR has the firepower of 5 men with M1 rifles, but its drawback is that it's twice as heavy as the M1. To make it easier to operate, it comes with a bipod and a sling.
So what I did, I took the BAR. I picked it up. And there was fellas, some of the old timers there, you know, we used to call them the old timers. They hollered at me, "You better shoot that thing right. Don't overdo it." Yeah, I knew what he meant. You know, not to use rapid fire.
Because of the BAR's firepower, Casillas is told to hide its profile to avoid becoming a target. He removes the distinctive bipod and sling.
They told me, they spot you with it, hey, that guy's got firepower, get him. That's the reason the guys with the machine guns, they all got wiped off the first day. For me, that was a big eye-opener.
Day 2 on the ridge. The Japanese step up their attack.
The mortar that landed, there was a piece that hit me right here. By then, the medic, he also got killed there. So, I mean, there was nobody to holler at.
For Easy Company, the situation is desperate. If they lose this ridge, the Americans will fail to break the Shuri line. May 18th, 1945, Okinawa, day 48. For the 307th Infantry's Easy Company, the assault on Ishimi Ridge wears on.
Sleep? No way. We were running low on ammunition. Heck, we didn't have any water, any food. On the 3rd day, all I had to eat was 1 little cube of sugar.
Easy Company has taken over the ridge, but the fighting is far from over as the Japanese mount a fierce counterattack. Before calling in air support, Easy's company commander orders the use of colored smoke grenades to mark targets.
The company commander hollered at the fellow that's carrying the grenades to throw a smoke grenade. And some other soldier answered him, "Sir, he can't go. He's gone." In other words, he had been killed. He said, "Well, then you go." He said, "I can't go either. I can't move." And then he hollers my name.
Private Joe Casillas must come out of the relative safety of his foxhole and crawl over 100 feet to the front line in order to retrieve and throw a colored smoke grenade.
They gave me the order to do it, so I went and done it.
Casillas starts to crawl. But after 2 days of intense fighting, there are many fallen American soldiers in his path.
I had to crawl through bodies that were all tore up, pieces of bodies, blood. It was pretty messy.
As Casillas crawls, the Japanese holding the higher ground take shots at him.
I was afraid because, well, I was just waiting to see when I was going to get one.
It takes many agonizing minutes before he finally reaches the bag of smoke grenades.
When I finally got over there, where I got the grenade, it was a green and a blue grenade. I threw it. Then I turned around and started going back. I was going back when he hollers back at me. Go back and threw the second grenade, because the first one was the wrong one.
In the confusion, raw recruit Casillas has thrown the wrong color smoke grenade. He's ordered to turn around and crawl all the way back a second time.
I headed back, and same thing, crawl over the bodies and blood.
This time, when he reaches the grenade, Casillas throws the correct color.
I finally got back to my foxhole. Well, I was fortunate. Afterwards, all the fellows told me that. They said, "Gee whiz, I don't see how in the heck you did it."
As a result of Casillas' actions, U.S. planes strafed the Japanese positions, temporarily holding them at bay. On the third day, ground support finally arrives when soldiers from the 306th Regiment punch a corridor through to the surrounded men of Easy Company.
What I saw on the third day, it was a wonder.
The 307th Regiment pays dearly for Ishimi Ridge. Of the 204 men who went up on May the 17th, only 48 return on May the 20th.
We wondered, how did we get out of there? I guess the good Lord was watching over us.
But the men that die do so, holding the line, and American reinforcements inexorably begin to advance. May 27th, day 57. The 77th Infantry Division is within striking distance of General Ushijima's headquarters at Shuri Castle. One last push will dislodge the Japanese from their command post and force them into full retreat. But after 2 months of heavy fighting, the U.S. 10th Army is depleted and drawing on fresh recruits. All of a sudden, Private First Class Jim Cotis realizes he's the most experienced soldier in his unit.
I ended up as the leader. And of course, it's hard to make them go when there's firing going. So I took off.
Cotis leads the reluctant soldiers into battle by example.
Made the mistake of turning around and signaling. Because when I turned, that Jap got me. You don't feel it. Really knocks you down, there's no question about that. Tried to get up, I couldn't. Had morphine syringe. Give myself a shot of morphine. That kept you from going into shock. Shock killed a lot of the boys. You folks, I don't know what you think about the pray to God and all that jazz. I prayed for rain. Believe it or not, it rained. I began moving back.
The rain gives Kotis enough cover to crawl back out of the line of fire.
And I got over the ledge. Who would be there but Johnny Cerez? He pulled out the poncho, covered me up, lit a cigarette, got the guys to come and put me on a stretcher. We were going out, and I don't know if it was an artillery shell or a mortar shell. 2 guys got hit, and I was dropped. That's when it really began to hurt, really hurt. I passed out. I woke up under an airplane. It was a C-54 ambulance plane, and what woke me up is the props. I was in good hands and out of battle. My fighting days were over.
May 29th, day 59. Finally, after huge sacrifices on both sides, General Ushijima is forced from his headquarters at Shuri Castle. 50,000 Japanese troops withdraw south to their last-ditch perimeter. But by the beginning of June, monsoon rains hit, and conditions change for the worse. The battlefield turns into a muddy swamp.
One of the problems that Army and Marine units experience on Okinawa is an age-old problem that fighting forces have dealt with forever. That is trench foot, immersion foot. They're dealing with men who are having to live out of mud holes every single day, and their feet, staying wet like they are, beginning to get bacterial infections. And a man with immersion foot is, first of all, someone who has been plunged into the absolute depths of misery, but then secondly, someone who's really not fit to be in the fight any longer. And so what it did was, in addition to everything the Japanese were throwing at us, the weather introduced something to the battle that reduced the number of men that were on the line and capable of fighting.
With the weather against them, and the Japanese still fighting, the Americans' forward advance grinds to a halt. After 2 months of brutal combat for Okinawa, monsoon rains bog down the American advance. Relief vehicles cannot get through to the front line. For days on end, the bodies of dead American and Japanese soldiers cannot be cleared and are simply left to rot. June 2nd, 1945. Day 63 of a battle that was supposed to take barely a month.
You're set up in a foxhole, and there's dead bodies around you for days at a time. The maggots, you know, all over the bodies, and they're laying there and they're bloated, and it's really gross. I mean, it's really gross. It really gets to you. You can see this in movies, but you don't have the stench. The stench is unbearable.
On top of these horrific conditions, the constant Japanese artillery barrage means no sleep for days on end.
The artillery, that was the worst, I think. I hated artillery. And these things came down around me all night long. And when they hit the ground, kind of shook like jello.
The Japanese Model 96 150mm howitzer fires an M92 high-explosive round using a TNT bursting charge. When the shell explodes, a pressure wave radiates out from the point of impact, and even when protected in a foxhole, this blast wave can force air to rapidly expand within the body, causing burst blood vessels, hemorrhaging of the lungs, or brain damage.
It was scary. You had to crawl inside your helmet.
And at night, the Japanese tried to infiltrate U.S. lines and catch soldiers asleep in their foxholes.
I'm telling you, you could look this way and you see nothing, and you look this way and you look back and there he is. One night, a Jap took me by surprise. He was almost right on me before I saw him. I stuck the bayonet right in his chest and emptied the 8-round clip in him as he was going over. and I tell you, he was a very dead Jap when he hit the ground.
In such relentless conditions, combat fatigue, now known as post-traumatic stress disorder, becomes the scourge of U.S. troops, removing men from the battlefields as surely as a bullet.
I was so tired. I couldn't believe it. It was just like something happened. I was in slow motion all of a sudden. I got back to the CP. Somebody standing there with a clipboard said that we were the last 3 original riflemen in the company. And with tears in his eyes, he wrote us up, all 3 of us, for combat fatigue. In a matter of hours, we were out in a hospital. War is hell, that's all I know, there's no question about it.
June 7th, day 68. This is the beginning of the end for the Japanese 32nd Army.
After the fall of the Shuri Line, Japanese forces are pushed back by the 10th Army. And at that stage, we pushed the Japanese down to the southern tip of the island. And with that, the Japanese are just simply beginning to run out of real estate.
General Buckner offers surrender to General Ushijima. When they don't get a response, the Americans step up their assaults. It's clear that for Japanese soldiers on Okinawa, surrender is not an option.
They thought it was an honor to die for the Emperor. And I thought it was an honor to live for Uncle Sam.
June 22nd, day 83. The Japanese army fight their last battle, knowing all is hopeless. In his command headquarters on Hill 89, General Ushijima issues his final orders before committing ritual suicide. Organized Japanese resistance ends, and the island is finally secured. The end tally after 82 days is horrific in sheer numbers of lives lost. 12,500 U.S. soldiers are killed and 39,000 wounded. The U.S. Navy sustains the largest loss of ships in its history, with 36 sunk. Combat stress on its own causes nearly 20,000 psychiatric casualties, the largest amount of any battle in the entire Second World War. Japanese losses are enormous. Around 110,000 soldiers are killed. Only 10,000 are captured or surrendered. And most tragically, over 100,000 Okinawan civilians, a quarter of the population, lose their lives. Overall, during this 82-day battle, nearly 250,000 people are killed. American strategists look at these figures and anticipate vast losses in the next stage of the plan, the invasion of Japan's mainland. And so, the Battle of Okinawa serves as a catalyst for the world-changing decision that follows. 6 days later, Japan surrenders, making Okinawa the last major battle of the Second World War. From this point onwards, warfare would never be the same again.